All right, guys, welcome back. It's been a great week, I hope, for you guys. We are talking about another Jesus habit called service this week. You guys have shared in your small group time about what it was like when somebody served you, the feeling that is when somebody takes time out of their day or resources that they have to do something nice for you. It feels good, right? I love to be served on occasion. So Jesus did this. We're going to talk a little bit about this today. The reasons why we serve. By the way, you guys did your spiritual gifts testing last week to find out what you are good at and what God has blessed you with and what He's made you good at. So part of that will play into what we do when we do serve other people. So why do you think we serve? What are the reasons why we serve, guys?
Jesus served. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, right? You know, he was a servant. In fact, he even said at one point, I know he said, he did not come to this earth to be served, but to serve us in the same way we should go. Likewise.
If nothing else, that's a good reason.
Right?
Yeah, I can't explain it other than thanks to mom and dad and thanks to youth ministers that just made it part of my life because I don't remember not serving. And so it's just something that you do. And now I do it because I love Jesus and I get to be like Jesus as I serve. But of course, it wasn't always like that.
Yeah. Besides knowing that serving is what kind of makes the world work, I think it's the primary way that we can share our faith with people. I'm a show and tell guy, to stand or just kind of, you need Jesus, kind of throw it out there. But when you serve and show generosity and love to people, then hearts open up.
That is true. Because I think a lot of times before we're able to share the truth with someone, we need to show them the truth, and that's serving them. That's actually actively serving them.
It's a good point. It is that kind of that mission of the church we talked about a couple weeks ago, where the big C, the capital church, we're known for serving people, right? I mean, that's what our job is. And the more we get known to do that, it's more attractive, I think, for people around us.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned all of us are designed differently, whether you're talking about spiritual gifting, but we're going to talk about, we're going to broaden this just a little bit. And what we want to do is help you understand how God designed you so that you can find a way that you can serve and feel like you're actually living out the design that God has for your life. And so we've got an acronym. It's SHAPE, and it stands for spiritual gifts, heart, ability, personality, and experiences. And we think that these 5 things shape how you're designed to serve. And so we're going to talk about each of these things. Let's start off with this idea of spiritual gifting. You already did part of this assessment, the SHAPE assessment, and learned about spiritual gifting and how God has, through His Spirit, given each of us some gifting that is meant to be used to build His church up. So in your guys' life, how have you seen spiritual gifts show up?
Yeah, me personally, God's made me an encourager, and He gave me kind of a mercy spirit, so I have that ability to see into people's lives and feel for them, and kind of, for me, it just helps me to encourage them, and whether it be words or actions, God's kind of given me that ability with gifting.
I've always enjoyed teaching, not just standing in front of a room and lecturing, but just the ability to make a scripture come alive in a way that you're like, wait, I can do that. That's not been part of my life, but it could certainly become part of my life. And just to see people accept scripture and start to live that way has been enjoyable.
Yeah, you're a good teacher, no doubt about that.
Yeah. I think serving is actually, we're talking about service today, but it actually is, kind of wired into my personality, to want to serve other people, which again, mercy, like Patrick said, is important. It's kind of put me, I think God's kind of developed within me this passion for leadership, but not necessarily the kind of leader that sometimes we think about, like where somebody's always, barking out orders or steering the ship kind of thing, but more of a servant leadership, type
behind the scenes
type thing.
You're definitely
by example.
And it's a good thing that God designs us all differently, because I'm kind of on the polar opposite of these guys in that I love teaching. That's one of my big ones that I get to do and I enjoy. I also like creating things and getting to help build new systems and things inside of God's church. But when it comes to like having a having the gift of mercy, that's not something that I get to see show up in my life a whole lot, in service. And I think that's one of the beauties of God's church is, we are designed differently because we're all needed as part of that. And your gifting is needed as part of being the church. So spiritual gifts are one aspect. Heart is another. Heart is what we are passionate about. Like, what do you love doing? And don't think that this has to have a spiritual answer. Like, what do you love doing in your life?
Well, I mean, going back to the gifts that I have, I actually have a heart for those things. I love to serve people like Joe. And it's funny how we talk about, the four of us make a pretty good team because of the fact that we are different. We embrace those rather than conflicting with those, and I have a heart for serving people and it's being part of people's lives. I mean, I love doing those things. I love to spend time with people.
Sports and students have always, been a part of my life, and sometimes those get to intersect and get to do a little bit of coaching or whatnot, but just developing young people and encouraging them to show them that even given what they feel like life has offered them, that there's always alternatives. They always have choices to make, but that doesn't really go away. That's not just for students, that's for everybody. But I've just, from my days of being a teacher in the public school system, that's just translated into the church work. And I don't know, I still have to be around the students for a certain amount of time to feel like I'm in the right spot.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, it's great. I think about what actually feeds me and gives me life. Like at the end of the day, when I go home and I'm like, why do I feel so amazing? And it's usually because maybe I've served or been around students, teenagers, young kids. I mean, they just kind of, just energize me. But thinking about something different or unique than what you men said was, I've been married for 30 years almost, and I really have a heart for marriages, to see couples thrive and, to see the value. I see the value in that. Not that everyone has to be married, obviously, but, I think I gravitate towards that sometimes to help people succeed in their marriages, just because I have a heart for that.
Absolutely.
Myself.
Absolutely. No, I don't have a sports bone in my body. I mean, the closest I've ever come was paintball. I don't know if that counts
one right
as
here,
sport.
I
Maybe
think.
esports, right?
Yeah.
Esports, does that count? But I do love games. I love being creative. So, I probably around this table, I'm probably the most artistic one sitting around this table. I love painting and I love drawing and doing that sort of stuff. I play multiple instruments. I love doing that sort of thing as well. And I love creating new things. So I think that those all kind of tie together, but just that's what gets me energized and I really enjoy that. That's where my heart lies, So the next one, we talked about spiritual gifts, we talked about heart. Next one is ability. So what have you been trained or equipped for? What are you actually good at doing,
Being a classroom teacher, went to college for that, and so they do train you, and there's loving kids, and then there's ability to have them all pay attention to you long enough that you can actually teach them. And so the classroom management side of stuff is but I've always felt like I'm the guy that knows a little bit about a lot of things, but I'm not an expert in anything. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way, but I don't know exactly how to explain that.
Well, but even like, for instance, unique in education, you did more in education than just teaching the average kid, right? I mean,
yeah, it was the exceptional student education, which is known as ESE. So I worked with the kids that weren't learning like everybody else and still needed to learn, and so they needed extra help. And so,
and that's an ability that not everybody sitting around this table has, right? How about you, Patrick?
Once again, the ability just to be around people and empathize with them and just kind of feel what they're going through so that I can encourage them forward and just kind of live life with them. It's always something I just love to do. So it's funny how you have a gift for it and I have a heart for it, and then God gives the ability to do something with those things. And so I have the ability to just be around people enough to live life enough with them to figure out a way to motivate them to the next place of where God would like them to be. So
good. Now, like when in your job, outside of here, like what are some things that you've been also trained for in there that you might be able to bring into the church?
Definitely the ability to evangelize, study people, learn about them. I think what happens is sometimes you say that word evangelize and we think of the guy that's on the corner of at the Bucks game or something with a bullhorn. And evangelism to me is more about befriending people, loving people enough to love them where they're at so that you can see the ability that God has placed in them for down the road. And so making friends with people, loving them. We have a Bible study at the place where I work because, God saw fit there was people there that needed to see who Jesus was and used me. And I was fortunate to be part of that process.
Okay.
Yeah. You do. I think that's key is knowing our, whatever abilities we have, strong or, maybe it's something we just kind of dabble in, but all of that, being able to use all of that, all of our abilities for the kingdom like you do at work, Patrick. Growing up, I was, like Jeff said earlier about sports, it's just something that I've always had a heart for from, I can't remember not being a baseball fan or, or playing sports in the neighborhood or in high school, in college. Was I any good? That's probably not true, but
Depends if you ask your mom or not.
Right. But along the way, I just picked up, a lot of, just kind of things that I could use, later on and, in kingdom work. So hopefully I've got some abilities that I've been able to
which is why you coach and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because that's an ability that you develop that you can now use in a kingdom way, right?
Yeah, I hope so. And being able to, I really enjoy being able to kind of be around people and be able to identify their gifting and, and their passion and their, and putting you in the right place. That's something I get a lot of.
Very cool.
I think I do okay at doing that.
So I already mentioned, in the creative arts side of things, I can play piano. Okay. I can also teach piano. I teach a number of kids piano. I can paint and I can use InDesign and Adobe products, even stuff like that can be used for
Don't
God, master of technology over here.
Computer words. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, sorry. But this idea, no matter anything can be redeemed by God. Any of your abilities, whether you have a past as a mechanic or you have whatever, it does not matter. You can take that and use it for God's kingdom. So that's abilities. Personality describes who we are. It's we have introverts and extroverts. We have people who are super outgoing. We have people who would rather read a book. I know personally, I need like my alone time. I need time to just step away and recharge. And that's part of who I am. So what are some words that you would say describe your personality? Like if you were just going to use a couple of words.
Energy.
Yeah.
Can all the extroverts raise their hands, please?
Believe it or not, it's kind of it's really not my personality to be extroverted. It's not.
Something you learned.
Yeah, which if in doing personality assessments, which I don't know if we'll probably go through some of that a little bit, or in your small group, you'll go through that. But assessment wise, I'm not. So I've had to kind of overcome that fact that my personality is to be introverted. To be kind of nervous around people, and to allow God to do something else with that. So it's it's interesting.
I'm developing. I was the quiet, shy person. I know some of my friends will challenge that, but if you weren't a friend, I was not interested in talking to you. And so just being quiet. I love to listen. That's actually a good skill, but I'd rather listen than talk. And so I believe that's something that God has developed in me. Instead of just shutting that possibility off, I think He's allowed me really through the church to come out of my shell.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so there's a lot of words out there that could describe us, right? You're going to, as part of the assessment that you're going to do, you're going to dig a little into this. And Joe mentioned there's lots of other ways to discover who you are. I'll just throw out a couple of great ones: the DISC assessment and the Enneagram. These are things that you can use to actually begin to figure out how you're designed personality-wise, because that helps us to then use those things. And there's no like right or wrong personality for being a part of God's kingdom. God doesn't want us to be robots. He wants us to really dive down deep and understand who we are, and that's why we're talking about this. I kind of skipped over you. Did you have?
Oh, it's fun. Okay. I'm a lot like Jeff. Actually, I'm more out. I love the people. I'm made for people, but I do value that time to get away and stop and be by myself and kind of just get with God for a while. I think Jesus was wise about that. He knew when to get away and just get right with God, and for the ability to be good with people.
Absolutely. So the last one of this shape is experiences. The things that we've had. Now, experiences are more than just being trained, but they're things that have happened in our life that have made us to be the people that we are today. And one of the things I mentioned earlier is I think that God can take anything that we surrender to him, and he can redeem it. And so there are some experiences which are hurts and brokenness in our life that, if we turn them over to God, they're things that he will use, right? And so can you think in your life of maybe an experience that has kind of shaped who you are today?
Yeah, this just happened on Sunday night in my small group. I don't know, I didn't intend on talking about it, but I talked about my parents' divorce, and how that affected me for, initially, and then, throughout the year after that, and how God used that to kind of shape me, and in the context of that small group, it was very important because I was with high school kids, and those men, a number of them I know had experienced similar, they've been through it too. So it just kind of, helped us relate.
Yeah, I think about, I was adopted, and that was always out on the table for discussion. Like I knew it, but then adopting kids ourselves, just being part of continuing that, or I don't know, growing our family in that manner. I just think it's opened up a lot of discussion with people and helped us to realize how we get adopted by God when we become his children, and kind of helps to explain that relationship as a real life experience.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like Joe, has been a product of many, many divorces and funny, my wife, who we've been married for over 22 years now, both of our families have multiple divorces on both sides. And it's just kind of like, we're figuring out how to do this right, figuring out how to, and so there's encouragement for you if you're products of that, which is very common. Give this over to God, and he can get you through these things. And those experiences he'll use and build you and make the people around you better. And you can use those experiences for kingdom work.
Absolutely. So I hope you understand, as we talked about these things, we're all of us sitting around this table, we're very different people, but God has taken our shape, and we can now use that in service to his kingdom. And so we have a challenge for you, actually.
Yes, we've talked about spiritual gifts. We've talked about your heart, abilities, personality, and experiences. So what we'd like you to do in your small groups, or actually individually, is to go home and work through what your shape is. Actually, in your basic study guide, there's a website that will be very helpful for you. I'll give the page number here if it's okay. It's page 47, and there's a website called freeshapetest.com. freeshapetest.com. And if you'll go through, it'll help you work through your shape. And then there's a number of questions that will help you process and understand and be able to figure out why and how to use the shape that God has given you for his kingdom.
Look at our shapes. There's some messy shapes up here, isn't there?
Yeah, I know.
Sorry about that.
Round is a shape.
I'm pretty in shape.
You are pretty.
No.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see you next week.
Yeah, have a great week.
All right.
Guys.